Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest here in Austin, Texas. Also a man in long-term recovery. I've had the gift since December the 27th of 1972. I'm very, very grateful to all the people who helped me along the way on that journey. Especially glad that you've joined us today. We are attempting here, I guess the purpose of these podcasts is to go a little bit deeper into 12-step spirituality. What was some of the history? That's something that always fascinates me. And how do you make recovery really meaningful and exciting? Because I think that's what it is meant to be. So those are some of the topics that we try to cover. I just did a workshop last Saturday. I was real happy with the turnout. We had about 250 people learning about the practice of two-way prayer, and going to get into that very briefly with my friend Kirk, who's joining us today. We're doing a series right now on challenged people who come into the program facing, God, there's enough challenges we've all got as addicts and alcoholics, but other things that it might be helpful to hear from some experts on some of the challenges that certain populations face. So we did a series or a couple of episodes on gays in recovery. Today we're going to look at youth in recovery, young people coming into 12-step recovery. Hope to do some on African Americans and minorities and people with various mental challenges who also come into the program. So my guest today is an old friend. Kirk Campbell is his name. He's with Cornerstone Team Counseling in Houston. And I mentioned about two-way prayer because many years ago, did a little pilot study over there with the parents and the young people who were in his program, kind of teaching them how to do two-way prayer. And then we did pre-testing and post-testing, and actually had our results published in a pretty respectable journal. So that was the start of a lot of the testing stuff. So Kirk, welcome to the podcast. It's really, really good to have you with us.
Great to be here.
Great. You work with kids. You've done it for a long, long time, if my memory serves me, huh?
About 25 years now.
Oh my God.
Yes.
And you've lived to talk about
it. Yeah.
What got you into that? Kind of tell us how that came about.
Well, originally, what gets a lot of us into the field is our own personal experience. I was fortunate enough to get into recovery in my adolescence. I kind of had a typical out of control adolescence, using drugs, criminal activity, all that. I had a family that was willing to go to any lengths for me and intervened and got me treatment. And I was fortunate enough to get sober and stay sober when I was 17. And always had an interest in reaching out and working with others, working a 12-step. That kind of segued into doing volunteer work at some treatment centers, worked in some residential centers as a psych tech. Used to work the graveyard shift back in the early 90s. And back then I used to be the guy. Back then when you were in residential treatment, they used to let you go out on the weekends to AA meetings and Astro World and things like that. And I was the guy that got in the van with them and took them out for the day and was able to have fun with them in recovery. And then I became interested in a more professional level and became an LCDC in the mid-90s. And worked for a couple of programs, and then in 99 we started Cornerstone. And so it's been Cornerstone in one form or another since 1999, and Never when it started did I think I'd still be here in 2022 doing some type of version of this. Never did I think that. But today I can say I'm very grateful to be with the team that I am.
I don't know your present team, but I knew some of the folks that were with you many years ago when we did that study, and you just have a way of attracting some really talented and dedicated people to your side. So it is a program of attraction, Kirk. So,
I appreciate you saying that.
Tell us about the kids. Tell us, you've dealt with these young people for a long, long time. I'd like to kind of go through some of the challenges that you see with them, point by point. Physically, we'll start with physical. Usually, they're a little tougher than the older people, so they tend to bounce back quicker, is my understanding. Is that right? Detox, not too often, but sometimes. What kind of physical condition are your kids in generally?
Well, it's actually really changed over the years because of the increase in fentanyl and heroin use. Okay, where we are seeing more young people that are needing detox. The other thing is also because of the change in marijuana. Marijuana is much more powerful than it used to be, and we're seeing clients that have longer term, and I don't mean decades of marijuana use, but it's like intense marijuana use that are having psychotic breaks and are needing like an acute care kind of setting. And it's developing into a lot of dual disorder stuff where, like marijuana induced early onset schizophrenia or psychosis and things like that. So, the clientele that we work with, we get the whole spectrum, or very early in their substance abuse and other issues. And you just have very concerned parents wanting to create an intervention / prevention for their child so that they don't, develop a problem for years and years and years. And then, we'll have 17, 18, 19-year-olds that are junkies, that need to go in for a full opioid detox. And, so it's like, we'll see the whole spectrum and everything in between. But yes, physically, because of their ability to heal, their age, they do bounce back quite a bit faster.
The experts say the earlier you are able to intervene, the better off you're going to be, though. So you get kids in what age ranges, Kirk?
13 to, right now I'm working with clients that are 13 to 23.
Yeah.
Okay.
Young adults, yeah.
Yes. And that's the early 20s is kind of on the high end for us.
Right.
Most of our sweet spot is that 17, 18 range. That's most of our clinical population right there.
Mm-hmm. Emotionally, how do you see the kids? What kind of things do you face there? Depression, anxiety?
Absolutely. Yeah, we see tons of dual diagnosis where it's just changed so much. It's changed in the approaches and the treatment, that there's things that, I'm still learning about. Like, we have a client that we're working with that is doing very well in the program, and he has major depression as well as substance abuse. And his psychiatrist has him on ketamine treatment for his major depression. And I was like, what?
Right. Yeah. I've heard of that. Yeah.
I say that. And so I had to dig in there and do a bunch of research. And there are studies that really point to it, for patients that suffer from major depression, that it has had some effectiveness with that population. And I work with him every day, and I've seen, and it's night and day when he's towards the end of his cycle of not having his treatment, down, apathetic, And, a roundabout story, I've seen him be responsive to that. But years ago, I would have, I would have thought, what are you talking about? This is crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And so,
years ago, anyone mentions that somebody's using any kind of medication,
correct.
Oftentimes the sponsor is going to come down hard and heavy on them.
Correct. Yeah. Which is, so we have clients that have dual diagnosis. We'll work in coordination with their psychiatrist, and we'll give them feedback on what we're seeing on our end. And I guess over the years, I have seen a lot of clients that have been, especially coming out of residential programs, Bill, be overly medicated, which can present its own set of issues as far as being able to make emotional and spiritual progress in their recovery. So we're very cautious of that. But with certain clients, without medication, they don't have a chance. If they are legit dual diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. And I think the program, by and large, the different fellowships have come a long way in appreciating that, understanding that, and supporting that. There's pockets of resistance, but
in our area, we really do.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's at least the areas that I go, it's totally accepted, and you're not frowned on or shamed. If you need additional help, whether that's going to therapy or medication or something along those lines, as long as the person is legitimately trying to get better. So I love that. I love that it's accepted. But you're right. 20, 30 years ago, you needed to do another inventory, or you just there was something wrong with you if you just, you were still sad after you had a certain amount of time in recovery.
Happy, joyous, and free, what's wrong if you're not? We've come a long way in many regards. I want to talk a little bit about alternative peer groups,
right?
Because Houston, where you are, I think if I have it right, is kind of the home to this model. My history teaches me a lot of it started with Palmer Drug Abuse, an Episcopal church over there in the Houston area that started working with young people and getting them into the program, and then creating a network which has just grown and developed over the years. And Cornerstone has always been an integral part of that.
Correct. Yeah. The alternative peer group started at Palmer Church in 1971, and that was the Palmer Drug Abuse Program. And then over the years, I bet it's a little bit like Christianity, over the years, some guy comes along and goes, you're okay, but I think we can do a better version of it over here, and so there's not just PDAP, but there's several other alternative peer group programs throughout Houston, and there's several across the nation, but they're also not everywhere.
No, I know. It really depends. I want to get into that at the end, because it really depends on some dedicated people who come together and want to create something new. And it's going to take that energy, because it's not just automatically there.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, you have to be a little bit crazy. You have to like hanging out with that. You have to like hanging out with adolescents.
Right.
You have to like to work on the non-traditional work schedule. A lot of evenings, a lot of weekends. And some of my recovery background set me up well for that. Right, like a lot of meetings that I go to, it was in the evening and in the weekends, doing service work or recovery projects, things like that. So yeah, I kind of forgot where you were going with that, but
no, just describe what a system might look like. what are the various component parts to an alternative peer group? What do they need?
Right. What we have is when we're explaining it to a new family, when you think of Cornerstone, there's really two programs going on simultaneously. The first part is clinical, like we offer clinical services, individual counseling, because we're all licensed counselors. Individual counseling. If it's a parent with an out of control child, we'll offer intervention counseling. If they're trying to figure out, do they need to go to wilderness therapy, acute care, we're part of that assessment intervention team that will, like on the show intervention, get them into treatment somewhere. We offer group therapy. And so it's just your traditional clinical services.
Right.
And then, part two of the program is it's like it's 12, we'll have evening meetings, like a, all right, I can't call, but we'll have 12-step meetings for the adolescents, but also in the next room, we'll have a parent meeting going on, which is like a version of an Al-Anon meeting. On the weekends, we'll have activities for them. We'll have a dance or a pool party or, go on a camping trip or something like that.
You're addressing the social needs that kids have.
Community.
And community. You're building.
And for the parents, we do a lot of these activities for the parents. What we found is you can't just address it. It's the whole family that's broken that's going through this, and
it's not just meetings. It's engagement. It's engagement with the whole family in a healthy
relationships.
Yeah.
The fellowship. We've also developed some of these community partnerships as well. Right. Which are awesome, where we give our families, not just the kids, but like the families, the parents. We have a partnership with one of our local yoga studios, and there's about 50 or 60 of us that go to a yoga class on Tuesday nights. We've got a partnership with an organization called Riders in Recovery, a mountain biking program, and we do a Sunday evening bike ride. And you go there, Bill, and it's awesome because it's bike enthusiasts, it's kids, it's alumni in the program, and it's a bunch of the adults. Who doesn't love riding bikes? And going down hills and going fast and laughing and that kind of stuff. And so it's like, besides every time we have a meeting, we also have coffee afterwards where we go to Denny's or IHOP, and the kids and parents go together, and it's awesome. And that's where the one-on-ones take place. People meet with their sponsors, the fellowship. But you're right. It's not just meetings. There is a social community, big emphasis on fellowship aspect.
Right. And there's recovery high schools have come online now. You've got at least one that I'm aware of over there in Houston. We got one here in Austin too.
I actually didn't know there was one in Austin.
Yeah.
Do you know the one?
Yeah, it's part of the University of Texas. It's connected with them there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, the high school we have here is Archway Academy. Ironically, its headquarters is at Palmer.
At Palmer, right? I visited there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's been there about 15 years. And they work with students from all the different APGs around town.
It's marvelous. And some churches get involved as well.
Well, they host the meetings.
Host the meetings, yeah.
Yes, and that's part of the partnerships. That good programs, they will build partnerships in the community.
Right. Yeah. Who's willing to play? We're losing our kids. They're going down the drain. the usual treatment models are not working. Let's come together and create something new. I mean, and that's what you guys have done over there, and you've done it really, really well. There have been some very good studies. That's one of the reasons they wanted me to do the two-way prayer study using your clients, was because they've already got so much data on the effectiveness of that model. So,
well, what was the outcome of that study?
Oh, we've got it. I'll put it in the chat, not in the chat, in the show notes.
Okay.
It was very good. Yeah. Yeah. Even your staff progressed. Yeah, so that was the amazing part.
Well, and we actually did a couple of those. Remember, we did the one at the Hope and Healing Center, and then you came up and did that
Right.
one in Kingwood with us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
well, thank God for Zoom. I don't have to travel around the country as much doing those things. So it's
yeah, no kidding.
but we had fun, man. We had fun, and we did some really good work.
Well, and it's awesome to hear you say you just did a workshop with 250 people in it,
right,
as well. That's like, yes, I'm so glad to hear that it's still going on.
Yeah,
and we still utilize it.
You're still using two-way prayer. That's almost maybe 10 years. I don't know, getting close to 10 years since we did it over there.
And what I found is it's most effective with my guys in second stage, which is our aftercare program.
Right.
You know, once they have 6, 9, 12 months of good recovery under their belt, and they're interested in that aspect of their life. Early on, most of them aren't that they're interested in making friends, or, you know, trying to figure out how to stay sober, or do they want to stay sober, or working through struggles and conflicts within their family, right? And it's the introduction to two-way prayer. I don't want to say like too early, but it was just not effective, you know, and it probably would have been with me too, you know, kind of looking back in hindsight, if I would have been introduced to it. I was much more interested in going to meetings, or the girls that were at the meetings, or whatever.
Absolutely, understood. But a little later on in the process, they become more interested in spirituality.
Oh yeah.
How do you engage them in that regard?
Well, there's a strong relationship, and this is isn't in young people, but this is in the adults and in the parents that we work with.
Yeah.
There's correlation between actually working with others, becoming interested in sponsoring, leading meetings,
right?
You know, doing legitimate service work within the group, and their interest level and growing spiritually. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's you know, and service is a big part of how you create community. You know, it's like you can't have, you know, it's like the guys that help me with the bike program. I got a guy that has a trailer full of bikes that drives down unpaid, you know, 60 miles every week, you know, and I got 4 or 5 other guys that are just supporters of the program that are, you know, have a lot of bike mechanical experience, yada, 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 and show up every week. Every part of our program, from our 12-step meetings to our partnerships in the community, there's somebody, there's a volunteer service coordinator for it. And, you know, it's like in my observation, there's a strong correlation between the folks that are doing service are the ones that are the most interested in the spiritual part of the program.
Right. Right. And that brings a certain energy to the whole encounter, doesn't it? You know, it's like if it's too clinical, it's sterile, it's devoid of spirit. But if you can get people engaged through volunteers, and the kids pick up on that, and the parents pick up on that, and we get well together.
Correct. You know? Yes. And it's like, you're not going to get well if you're getting something for nothing. You know, like one of the things, if you're working in one of my groups, you got to have a job. Like if you're in my alumni group, my aftercare group, you got a job, you know, whether that's reaching out and bringing a new person to a meeting, or chairing a meeting, or whatever. It's like people that are invested And I don't know if that's even so much like a recovery concept as it is a character building concept, or, something we learned when we were kids, right? If you got skin in the game, you're going to care more about the game. We also live in a world that is filled with entitled people, and entitlement and recovery don't go hand in hand, right? Like getting everything handed to you does not come hand in hand. I mean, learning to take care of yourself, there's only one way to learn to take care of yourself, and that's through working on yourself, or working with others, or doing a job. And so I'm very much into the action.
I know you are. Yeah. I mean, Dr. Bob summed it up. Love and service are our code. The addiction, what I'm convinced of is addiction is a love disorder. I'm not able to receive love, and I'm not able to give love, and I'm trapped in a substitute for that I love, be it alcohol, food, sex, whatever the particular addiction might be. It's a substitute for what I'm really looking for. And as those blocks get removed, as the love starts to be able to come in and go out, it naturally leads itself to service.
Well, I might borrow that from you tomorrow night. I'll put that up on the board when I'm meeting with my alumni group. Here it is, guys. Here's Kirk's new idea: love disorder.
That's it.
I'll give you credit for it, for sure.
Oh no, yeah. give a woman in AA. I was at a meeting. I will never forget. The subject was I was 1 year sober, and the subject was what really lies at the heart of your alcoholism. And people said, well, my wife's a pain in the ass, or or I got lousy genes, or whatever. And the woman said, I have a love disorder. And I'm telling you, it was like a ton of bricks just hit me on the head. She's right.
Yeah.
She's so right.
Yeah.
And
the language, that's great language. I love that, because like the language you hear in the clinical world is all this other stuff. Well, you have low self-esteem and
right.
Which is true.
It's all true.
Which is true, but it's so much of what I spend time talking about with clients that we work with is just that, is how can I have a relationship with myself where I'm not in my ego, I'm not trying to protect my image, I'm not lying to look cooler, actually learning how to tell the truth, and all of those paths lead to, when you make progress with them, having a better relationship with yourself. How many of the clients that we work with can stand there and look in the mirror and just some of the time go, man, you're okay, or you're going to be okay, or I'm starting to like who I see. And so, yeah, I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, love disorder is a great term. I'm going to borrow that.
You got it, buddy. And the family members have to go through a process of change as well, don't they?
Family's key. Family's the most important
absolutely
part,
key.
right? Family is the most important part. What kills addicts is enablers and codependency.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Kills, the thing that I've watched, I've had more clients die in their parents' house with them trying to protect or do harm reduction, which is the new term in our industry. Right. We're going to do harm reduction treatment or therapy. And that can be very dangerous, in my opinion. But working the family system, the family dynamics, parents learning to have a backbone again, to remove the entitlements from their family, to
stop questioning their own guilt and
totally
shame and all
let
that
go
sort
of their shame, feeling like they failed. I
passed on my genes to you. It's my fault.
Right. Or being embarrassed about what the neighbors are going to think,
right.
or, all that kind of stuff. But it's like the family system is by far the most important component of creating long-term recovery for the young person. Like nothing is more important than that, and nothing's more difficult.
That's right.
Right. Like, because the culture that we live in is a quick fix culture. And when a parent has an out of control child, they want to dump their child off at treatment, send them to their, boarding school or wilderness, and they want them to come back fixed.
That's right. You change them.
Yeah, you change them. That never happens long term. Sometimes the child will go off to treatment, they'll learn to come back, and they'll learn the program language for a while to keep their family off their back, or they'll learn how to placate better. And but nothing's more important than the parents being able to take their own inventory, look at themselves in the mirror, and say, what do we need to change? How did we, why did we stay in denial, or how did we enable this? And if those two things get looked at and changed, the outcome can be a lot better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You involve the kids with the 12-step fellowships in the community. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Talk to me about that. How does that work out?
So we'll have a couple of our own meetings a week, where there's, like I said, the teens in one room and the parents in another. But depending on the kid, say Bill was a kid that was coming into the program and he had a pretty serious drinking problem. I was working with you. I would say, Bill, I want you to come to our 2 Cornerstone meetings a week. But you know what? In your neighborhood, I know that there's 3 or 4 really good AA meetings. And so I want you to also go out to these meetings, and I'll give you some names and numbers of some guys that I know at the meetings, and we'll take you under their wing. Because we don't want them to just build dependency on our model, because we're short term. You're going to age out of adolescence at some point.
Yeah, I'm 77. I don't think I fit in real well there today.
Yes. You're
emotionally, I might, Kirk.
Emotionally, you're about 17, and you would fit right in with us. So those of us that have never emotionally matured, that's
why we hang around. I used to say when I was a counselor, you guys get to do this thing in 30 days. I'm here for years.
Yeah.
And they'd say, you need it.
And I love it. So we totally utilize the AA and Al-Anon in the community and in their neighborhoods. We're not in every neighborhood in Houston, so we want them to have access to positive support groups that are close to them. Building the habit of going to meetings on a regular basis,
right,
is, so much of everything that we do in life is not about intellectual understanding, but it's about our routines and habits. And that's a lot of what we want to focus on. It's, what are your routines? What are your habits? Do you have a meeting schedule? Does your meeting schedule make sense to you? Do you follow your meeting schedule? Is there the physical component? Are you active physically?
Yeah.
Because that also affects the mental health too. And so we do spend a lot of energy and specific focus on habits and routines, and not forcing them to do it, but giving them access to great tools and other communities besides ours.
And the ages keep coming down. You got sober at what, 17? 17. I got sober at 27. And I used to go to a young people's AA group in Detroit where I got sober. And for that day and time, 27 was young.
Right.
But
right.
Now you're seeing kids at 14, 15, 16. I do worry. I'm a chronic worrier, but
it doesn't show.
Say?
It doesn't show that much.
I
You
cover
do a good job hiding
it. Can kids get labeled as an addict when they're not really so, or an alcoholic? How do you approach that?
That's like,
because some are going to grow out of it. Some are going to grow out of it.
Totally.
Some are not. Such a tough question.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, there's a peer pressure aspect of it that we cannot pretend is not there. Adolescents want to assimilate. They want to fit in. All right. So do young adults. So do all of us, like to a certain extent. So if you're going to AA and everybody's saying, well, I'm Kirk and I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
And on some level, if they want to share, if they're unsure and they want to share in the meeting, they're not going to say, well, I'm Kirk and I'm not sure, because that'll get frowned upon in the meeting. Right. So there is a aspect to it that is a little bit gray. It is a little bit murky. From our approach with it is that, most of the clients that we get obviously have substance abuse problems. Okay. Right. But pushing the label of you have to self-identify as an alcoholic or addict, I've stepped back from that over the years. And I think that is, and the way I approach it is, I don't really care what you call yourself, as long as you stop your behavior, you build some self-esteem and you learn how to take care of yourself. You'll have to figure that out on your own down the road.
Well, AA came around and said, it's for alcoholics and those who have a desire to stop drinking.
Correct.
I mean, they addressed that many years ago. I think they were way ahead of the curve.
I love that. That's one of the things that I love about AA, because I do have clients that come and say, well, I'm not an alcoholic. Why should I go to this meeting? And I go, look, anybody in AA that says you got to be an alcoholic to be there, first off, doesn't know what they're talking about, because the only requirement to go to AA is a desire to stop drinking. And you don't have to identify as an alcoholic. You can just be there because you're curious. You can be there because, you're trying to improve your life and you're still trying to figure it out. And the, hardcore zealots in AA that say, when I used to go to AA as a kid, there was always some jerk that would say, well, I spilled more beer, than you guys ever drank. And, that's not really helpful.
Oftentimes it's not even true.
Yeah. That's not really helpful to making people feel loved or welcomed.
Right.
Or, the first tradition part of the program. A little less judgment, please. More acceptance and a little less judgment.
There you go. What can you tell us about working with the steps? Are there any things that you found helpful in approaching the 12 steps that might be a little bit different with younger people?
I think that this is where
PADAP changed some of the steps, as I recall. Yeah.
Yes. No, we changed the second step to sticking with winners in order to grow, because it is such a huge part of being peer pressure, having friends, the social aspect is big for all of us. I mean, it's big for the adult, but it's everything in your adolescence and when you're a young adult.
Right.
And so we changed that one, and our big emphasis, all my time I spend with the clients is on steps 1 through 4. 1 through 4 is if you're working strong, 1 through 4, you're going to be stable. If you're working a first step and you're coachable, surrender. Am I coachable? You're sticking with winners in order to grow, which means, and it's not just AA people or people in recovery. There's lots of other winners out there. There's Al-Anon winners. There's, some of our partners in the churches and in our other aspects are, legit recovery supporters. And it's hard to do anything good if you don't feel like you have positive, loving people behind you. And so so that's step 2. And then step 3 and 4 start to focus on turning your life over to the care of God as you understand them. And so our focus is on pretty much once you get through with that and you're doing well, go work the rest of the steps with your sponsor. I don't need to get into your business past that. I'm not interested in taking clients through inventories or their amends or anything like that. That's between them and their sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could get into that like way more if you wanted to, but it's and I think some of this is from the two-way prayer workshop. Steps 1 through 4 are about, or 1 through 3 are about
connection,
which is being stable. You get that connection.
That's right.
You get stable. The insanity and the day, the relapses stop. The self-destructive behavior stops. Some of the self-created crises, the volume gets turned down on those things. And,
that's right.
That's what, and we really see ourselves, our job is intervention and stepping stone. We're not going to be working with a family for 5-10 years. We have them for about 18 months to 24 months going through the program. So what we're looking for is that stability part, that connection.
That's right. And so what advice would you give to people in AA or NA or CA who are working with young people, 16, 17, 18? What are some things you might encourage them to be aware of, sensitive to, that kind of thing?
We have that. I mean, we have 16,
I know
17,
you have them.
18-year-olds that are really involved in AA. And, the people that I would say that are in AA that are intimidated by young people is treat them exactly the same, because they are the same, right? They're looking for the exact same thing that the adult AA member is looking for. And they may act like they don't care, but that's part of their insecurity, right? That's part of their mask that they're wearing, that we all wear to a certain extent. But I would, to give them invite them to the group consciences, give them the service opportunities, call on them to share, right? Don't treat them
too different is what I'm hearing.
No, I mean, please don't treat them different. We have some of the clubs here in Houston. There's this awesome, it's like some of the young people's AA meetings. Which is great. We have some young people's dedicated AA meetings. The concept is great, but some of that can be the blind leading the blind.
Right.
What I've seen be the most successful are these hybrids, right? Where there's the old timers. There's guys like us running around, and then you got the working with the young guys and going to the prisons together and, planning the retreats together. And it's where it's just, where it's that mixture of guys that have been sober for decades, being inclusive with and bringing in the younger guys. And a lot of the guys that I know that have been sober for decades, they love being around the kids because of their energy.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And it's the enthusiasm and learning things for the first time.
Right.
They're not jaded as much as we are yet.
Right.
And
then I see some of these young,
maybe
like yourself, I see some of these younger people who just are taking off with the program. I mean, I got a fella kind of working with, he's got about 6-7 years now sober, got sober as a teenager, but I'm telling you, he's diving into the history. He's how do we make this stuff available to people? Because some of the old stuff is sound and dated, but the essence of it is exciting. I mean, see, to me, that's what two-way prayer is about. Right. Two-way prayer. It's not sitting down and getting holy. It's a way to get inside your head and find that little piece of sanity that most of us still have, and learn to connect with that and ultimately be guided by that and grow the presence of that, and what you call it, I could care less. Like yourself, when you were describing, it was, we've changed the name of God. Well, we've so abused the word God. I mean, most of the ones who are out there defending that concept have, well, I mean, most of them are pretty wrong, as it's about love,
Right. Right.
Turn my will and my life over to the care of love. Yeah.
Maybe I'll change that in our steps, because I don't need to write off to New York to do that. We could just do that on our own.
Well, I keep waiting for New York to show up at my door and arrest me, the AA police, but they haven't come yet. And they really cut us a lot of leeway to go out there and do what we want to do. Well, and it's good. It's when I was first sober, I couldn't imagine 50 years of this.
Right.
But I've found a way to keep it fresh, to keep it young, and that's what the two-way prayer is all about. I mean, it gives me access to that energy, which is what young people are looking for. Right. Show me a healthy way to stay sober. Show me a fun way to stay sober, an exciting way to stay sober.
But the other thing the two-way prayer gives access to is authenticity. The thing that the language that I would use for that is being able to speak. How many people in my life can I speak unfiltered to, uninhibited, right? And it's like, and I do this professionally, and it's still hard to do that. Where I get access to that is in the journaling, in the two-way prayer, and that helps it to bleed into my other relationships, right?
Thou shalt not bullshit thyself. Because a part of you knows you are, I know. And that's the honesty thing. I mean, the honesty thing, you got to cut through this. And even if I can only do it in the presence of God, but then I get a little more courageous and I'm able to share it with other folks as to what's really going on inside.
And that's where when you have that courage, that's where some of these partnerships come from.
Absolutely.
But seriously, it's like that's where some of our partnerships have come from, where with the churches we have partnerships with, their leadership has a lot of authenticity. The yoga studios, the bike program, it's like it's God working behind the scenes or whatever, bring in, I don't know if it's just the magnetism of, authentic people being drawn together, but it's, that's where. Sorry, I just had a call come in. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That you said that's where what?
That's where those partnerships have come from. We would have never found those partnerships if we weren't doing some of the personal work and looking for them out in the community.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I'm sure you have a bike ride to get to, or a mountain to go climb with about 30 kids. So I'm going to let you.
That's coming up in August. We actually do have one coming up.
Where are you going?
We're going to Stanley, Idaho.
Oh my God.
Yes, in August on a mountain biking trip.
Well, give my best to Stanley. I haven't seen him in forever.
Have you been out there before?
No, I've never been to Idaho.
It's worth the trip. It's worth the trip.
Oh, I'm sure it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Well, lucky you. Well, you've been restored to sanity somewhat, Kirk. That's good.
That's part of how I keep my sanity. All right.
Well, listen. We could go on forever, but it was wonderful touching base with you once again. And if anybody wants to get in touch with Kirk, I will put his address into the show notes. And yeah, it's just the last thing. Maybe if someone out there wants to form an alternative peer group, is there any place you can point them to?
They just feel free to email me. And
okay.
You know, the first off, you have to be a little bit crazy.
Well, our listeners, I mean, we're all listening to God, so it's we qualify, Kirk. Don't worry about us.
And then just send them to me. I mean, it's
okay.
Just ask them to email me, and I can kind of pick through their thinking a little bit about what they want to start, and then I can direct them that way.
Perfect. Okay. Well, listen, give my love to the kids, and I need to get over there. We'll do a retreat sometime, and I love their energy and as well as your parents, the family group. They're terrific people.
Yes, terrific people. Love to do that.
As are you. So thank you for taking the time to share the experience, strength, and hope with us. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. I hope this was helpful in opening your minds to what kids, young people are going through, and how perhaps you might better be able to be maybe more welcoming or more understanding when you meet them in the program. So thank you for listening. God bless, and keep coming back.